Margaret is 73 years old. Last month, she read something online that made her so angry she couldn't sleep. In December 2025, the Department of Transportation was supposed to implement new rules that would have protected wheelchair users like her. Rules that would have fined airlines when assistance took too long. Rules that required airlines to provide loaner wheelchairs when they damaged yours. Rules with teeth, with enforcement, with real consequences. But 3 weeks before those protections were supposed to take effect, the DOT quietly announced they were pausing them indefinitely. The airline industry had lobbied hard, spent over $4 million fighting the regulations, and they won. The protections that Margaret and millions of other seniors were counting on just disappeared. Here's what nobody's talking about. While the government was shelving new protections, airlines were quietly cutting wheelchair assistance budgets, hiring fewer attendants, and relying more on cheap subcontractors. Wait times that used to average 30 minutes in 2024 are now pushing 60 to 90 minutes in 2026. The fraud problem, people faking disabilities to skip security lines, has exploded by 30%, which means real wheelchair users wait even longer because resources are being stolen by scammers. Everything got worse, the protections got weaker, and most seniors have no idea any of this happened because it wasn't on the evening news. It was buried in Federal Register notices that nobody reads. But here's what Margaret discovered, and it's what I'm going to share with you today. While the new protections got killed, the old laws are still on the books. Laws that have been there for decades. Laws that give you real power if you know how to use them. Federal regulations that airlines are betting you don't know about, and recent court settlements. We're talking 2024 and 2025, that are paying out millions of dollars to seniors who experienced wheelchair failures, but most eligible people have no idea the money even exists. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly what got worse in 2026, what protections you lost, but most importantly, what legal rights you still have and how to use them to force airlines to do what they're supposed to do. Have you had wheelchair assistance issues in the past 2 years? Comment yes, because if you flew between 2022 and 2025, there's money waiting for you that you don't even know about. Let's start with the bad news, because you need to understand just how much the system has deteriorated in the past 2 years. In December 2025, just weeks before new wheelchair protection regulations were supposed to take effect, the Department of Transportation announced an indefinite pause on enforcement. These weren't small changes. These were rules that disability rights advocates had fought for over 5 years to get implemented. Here's what you were supposed to get starting in January 2026. Airlines would have been required to provide real-time tracking for wheelchair assistance requests. You'd be able to open an app and see exactly where your assigned attendant was, just like tracking an Uber driver. If assistance didn't arrive within a reasonable time, the airline would face automatic fines, not warnings. If your wheelchair was damaged, airlines would have been required to provide a loaner wheelchair immediately at the airport, not days later after you filed paperwork. And the big one, if an airline damaged your mobility device, they would face escalating fines based on how many violations they'd racked up. Repeat offenders would pay serious money. All of that died in December. The official reason was that airlines needed more time to implement the technology. The real reason? Follow the money. The airline industry spent $4.2 million lobbying against these specific regulations in 2024 and 2025. They argued the rules were too expensive, too complicated, too burdensome. And they won. So what happened after the protections got paused? Airlines immediately started cutting costs. Wheelchair assistance is handled by subcontractors at most airports, third-party companies that airlines pay as little as possible. With no new regulations forcing accountability, airlines cut their contracts even further. Fewer attendants, lower pay, higher turnover. The average wheelchair assistance wait time at major hubs in 2024 was about 35 minutes. In 2026, it's averaging 63 minutes, almost double. And at some airports during peak hours, travelers are waiting 90 minutes or more. That's not an exaggeration. Department of Transportation complaint data shows a 42% increase in excessive wait time complaints between 2024 and 2026. Then there's the fraud epidemic that's making everything worse. You might have heard the term Jetway Jesus. It refers to able-bodied passengers who request wheelchair assistance to skip long TSA lines and board early, then miraculously walk off the plane without help. This fraud increased by 30% between 2023 and 2026. Every fake request ties up a wheelchair and an attendant who should be helping someone who genuinely needs it. Airlines could verify medical need, but they're terrified of ADA lawsuits, so they don't. The result is a system overwhelmed by fraud while real users suffer. And here's the most frustrating part. The technology exists to fix all of this. Some airports have piloted real-time tracking systems, a few airlines tested better coordination apps, but without federal mandates, without enforcement, without consequences for failure, airlines have zero incentive to invest. Why spend money on better service when there's no penalty for terrible service? This is the 2026 reality. Longer waits, fewer protections, and a government that chose airline profits over passenger dignity. I want you to understand exactly what you were supposed to have by now, because the contrast between what was promised and what you actually got is infuriating. The new regulations that got paused in December 2025 were the result of years of advocacy work by disability rights organizations. Paralyzed Veterans of America, United Spinal Association, disability rights advocates, they all pushed for these changes. Senators held hearings, testimonies were given, the rules were written, published for public comment, refined, and ready to go, and then they just stopped. Here's what you lost. Real-time tracking would have given you visibility and accountability. Imagine being able to open your Airlines app after landing and see your wheelchair attendant, James, is 3 minutes away, gate B17. Instead of sitting there wondering if anyone is coming, if your request got lost, if you should ask again or keep waiting, knowledge is power, and airlines took that power away by killing the tracking requirement. Mandatory loaner wheelchairs would have prevented the nightmare scenario that happens all too often. Your personal wheelchair gets damaged in the cargo hold. Under the old system, which is still in place, you file a claim and wait days or weeks for a resolution. Meanwhile, you're stranded. You can't get around the destination city, you can't do the things you traveled to do. The new rule would have required airlines to provide an appropriate loaner immediately, the same day, at the airport. Not a cheap hospital-style wheelchair that doesn't fit your needs, but something comparable to what they damaged. That protection is gone. The escalating fine structure was the real enforcement mechanism. First violation, let's say a $10,000 fine. Second violation within 6 months, $25,000. Third violation, $50,000 and potential suspension of operating authority. Airlines would have been forced to take this seriously because repeat failures would have cost them real money. Without that enforcement, there's no incentive to improve. A settlement here and there is cheaper than fixing the system. Damaged wheelchair reporting transparency was another piece you lost. Airlines would have been required to publish quarterly reports showing how many wheelchairs they damaged, how many assistance requests failed, average wait times by airport. Public data creates public pressure. When everyone can see that United damages twice as many wheelchairs as Delta, market forces might actually drive change. But airlines fought hard to kill the transparency requirement, and they succeeded. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice. Robert is 76, a veteran who uses a wheelchair due to injuries from his service. In January 2026, just weeks after the new protections were supposed to be in place, Robert flew from Phoenix to visit his daughter in Virginia. His wheelchair assistance request at his connection in Dallas never came. He waited 73 minutes. Under the new rules that were supposed to exist, the airline would have faced an automatic fine and Robert would have had real-time tracking showing him exactly what the delay was. Instead, he sat there, invisible, forgotten, with no information and no recourse. When he finally got help and made his connection, his personal wheelchair came off the baggage carousel with a cracked frame. Under the new rules, the airline would have been required to provide him with a comparable loaner that same day. Instead, they gave him a claim form and told him to check back in a week. Robert spent 5 days of his visit unable to leave his daughter's house because he didn't have a functional wheelchair. This is what you lost. This is what $4 million in airline lobbying bought. So now your dignity, your independence, your protection, they are all gone. Now, let me tell you about something that is actually new, actually time-sensitive, and actually putting money in seniors' pockets right now if they know about it. Over the past 2 years, 3 major airlines settled class action lawsuits related to wheelchair damage and assistance failures. These settlements created funds specifically to compensate passengers who experienced violations during specific time periods. But here's the problem. The notices for these settlements were published in legal journals and on settlement administration websites that most people never see. They weren't mailed to everyone who flew. They weren't announced at airports. The airlines are legally required to notify potential class members, but they do the bare minimum. And as a result, millions of dollars are sitting in settlement funds right now, waiting to be claimed by seniors who have no idea they're eligible. United Airlines settled a wheelchair damage lawsuit in March 2024 for $1.9 million. The settlement covers passengers who flew United between January 2021 and December 2023 and experienced wheelchair damage, excessive wait times for assistance, or denial of pre-boarding. If you flew United during that period and had any wheelchair-related issue, you are likely eligible to file a claim. The average payout for approved claims has been between $400 and $800, depending on the severity of the incident. American Airlines settled a similar lawsuit in June 2025 for $2.3 million. This one covers flights between March 2022 and April 2025. Same types of violations: damaged wheelchairs, delayed assistance, improper handling. The claims process is straightforward. You submit basic information about your flight, describe what happened, and provide any documentation you have. Approved claims have been paying out between $300 and $900. Delta settled their case in September 2025 for $1.1 million, covering flights from January 2023 through August 2025, smaller settlement, but still meaningful compensation for people who were harmed. Here's what makes me angry about this. Helen is 77 years old. She flew United in 2022 from San Francisco to New York to visit her sister. Her wheelchair was severely damaged. She filed a complaint with the airline at the time, but never heard back. 2 years later, in 2024, she happened to be talking to a friend who mentioned seeing something online about a United wheelchair settlement. Helen looked it up, found the settlement administrator's website, and realized she was eligible. She filed a claim. It took about 15 minutes. 3 months later, she received a check for $612. Money she had completely given up on, money she didn't know existed. And here's the thing. Helen only found out by accident, by random conversation with a friend. How many other seniors who are eligible have no idea? The deadlines are real. The United settlement claim deadline was extended to April 2026, but that's coming up fast. American's deadline is July 2026, Delta's is October 2026. If you don't file before the deadline, the money goes back to the airline. You lose your chance forever. So here's what you need to do right now. Think about whether you flew any of these airlines during the covered time periods. United, January 2021 through December 2023, American, March 2022 through April 2025, Delta, January 2023 through August 2025. If you did, and if you experienced any wheelchair assistance issue, any damage, any excessive delays, you need to check your eligibility. The easiest way is to search online for the airline name plus wheelchair. Settlement 2024 or Wheelchair Settlement 2025. The settlement administrator websites will come up. You can also check the databases maintained by disability rights advocates and Paralyzed Veterans of America. They track active settlements and provide links to claim forms. The claims process doesn't require a lawyer. You don't have to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt. You just need to show that you flew during the relevant period and experienced a covered violation. Most people are submitting claims with nothing more than their flight confirmation email and a written description of what happened, and it's working. Checks are going out, comment settlement if you think you might be eligible, and I'll reply with the direct links to the claim forms. This is your money. The airlines violated your rights, the courts made them pay. Now, you need to claim what's yours before the deadline passes and it's gone forever. So, that's the bad news. Protections got weaker, wait times got longer, and new regulations got killed by airline lobbying. But here's what they couldn't take away. The laws that have been on the books for decades, the Air Carrier Access Act, the Montreal Convention, the requirement that every airline has a complaints resolution officer, these protections still exist, they still have power, and most seniors have no idea how to use them. For the rest of this video, I'm going to give you the legal weapons that airlines are betting you don't know about, the exact phrases, the specific regulations, the enforcement mechanisms that work right now, today, even without the new protections that got paused, because while they weakened the rules going forward, they can't erase the laws that are already in place. And those laws, when you know how to use them, still have teeth. Let's start with a regulation that's been on the books since 1990, long before any of the 2026 changes were even proposed. Federal law states that wheelchair assistance must be provided in a prompt manner. Now, prompt is deliberately vague in the regulation text, but here's what decades of enforcement cases and legal precedent have established. 30 minutes is the maximum reasonable wait time under normal circumstances. If you've been waiting longer than that, the airline is violating the Air Carrier Access Act, and you have legal recourse. Most seniors have no idea this timeline exists. You sit at a gate for an hour, sometimes 90 minutes, thinking you just have to wait patiently until someone gets around to helping you. But every minute past 30 is a documented violation that you can report and potentially receive compensation for. Let me tell you about James. He's 76, a decorated veteran with a bad hip from his service years. Last month, he requested wheelchair assistance for a connection at Newark Airport. His first flight landed on time. His connection was leaving from another terminal. James had requested assistance 48 hours in advance and had a confirmation number. But when he got off the plane, there was no wheelchair waiting. He found a gate agent who radioed for help. James waited 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. He kept asking. They kept saying someone was coming. After 87 minutes, an attendant finally arrived, rushed and irritated. James missed his connection. It was the last flight of the day to Portland, where his daughter lives. When James went to the customer service desk, they rebooked him for the next afternoon. No hotel, no meal vouchers, no compensation. The agent told him the missed connection was his responsibility because he was physically present at the airport. James didn't know that he could have escalated the situation after 30 minutes. He didn't know there was a specific person with authority that gate agents don't have who could have solved his problem. And he definitely didn't know he could file a formal Department of Transportation complaint that would create a permanent record and potentially lead to compensation. Here's the phrase that changes everything, and I want you to memorize it right now. The moment you've been waiting 30 minutes for wheelchair assistance, you find any airline employee and you say exactly this. I've been waiting 30 minutes for wheelchair assistance. I'm timing this request under ACAA regulations. What is the delay? Those words, ACAA regulations, trigger something immediate. You're no longer just a frustrated passenger. You're someone who knows the Air Carrier Access Act exists, someone who's documenting the timeline, someone who might file a formal complaint. Watch how quickly attitudes change when you demonstrate that you know the law. While you're waiting, document everything, note the exact time you made your initial request. Take a photo with a timestamp on your phone showing the empty wheelchair assistance area. Write down the names of every person you speak to. All of this becomes evidence if you end up filing a complaint later. And here's what most people don't realize. Filing a complaint isn't just about getting personal compensation. Every complaint you file goes into a database. The Department of Transportation tracks patterns. When one airport or one airline racks up hundreds of complaints about the same violation, it triggers investigations. Your single complaint might not change the world, but it contributes to a pattern that can force systemic change. This 30-minute standard didn't disappear when the new 2026 regulations got paused. It's been federal law for over 30 years, and it still applies today. Now, let's talk about money. Real money that airlines legally owe you when they damage your wheelchair, but they will do everything possible to avoid paying the full amount. This law didn't change in 2026, it's been in place for decades, and it still protects you right now. When your wheelchair is damaged by an airline during a flight, you are entitled to significant compensation. For international flights, the Montreal Convention sets the liability limit at approximately $2,000. For domestic flights, Department of Transportation regulations provide similar protections. The exact amounts can vary slightly, but we're talking about real money, not token gestures. Here's the problem, and this is where airlines make their profit. When your wheelchair gets damaged, the airline's first response is almost always a lowball offer. They'll send someone to inspect the damage, express sympathy for your situation, and offer you maybe $150, maybe $200 if it looks really bad. They're counting on you accepting that number because most people have no idea what they're actually entitled to under federal law. Let me tell you about Patricia. She's 69 and uses a custom wheelchair that cost $8,000. It's fitted specifically for her spine condition, built to her exact measurements. She cannot use a standard wheelchair without experiencing significant pain. Patricia flew from Phoenix to Chicago to visit her son. When her wheelchair came off the baggage carousel, she immediately saw the damage. The frame had a visible crack running along the left side, and one of the wheels was completely missing, apparently torn off during handling. Patricia was devastated. This wasn't just expensive equipment, this was her independence, her mobility, her connection to the world. She went to the baggage claim office and showed them the damage. They took photos, filled out a form, and told her they'd mail her a check for $150 within 2 weeks. Patricia was upset, but she assumed that was the standard compensation. That's what the airline told her, so it must be true, right? Wrong? Patricia mentioned the situation to her son over dinner that night. Her son is a lawyer. He asked her one question: did they mention the Montreal Convention? Patricia had never heard of it. Her son explained that for international flights, which her Phoenix to Chicago flight qualified as under the convention's definitions due to the routing, airlines are liable for up to approximately $2,000 in wheelchair damage. Not $150, $2,000. The next morning, Patricia went back to the airport. She asked to speak with a supervisor in the baggage claims office. When the supervisor came out, Patricia said these exact words: "I'm rejecting your initial offer. I'm filing a claim under Montreal Convention Article 22 for the full replacement value of my damaged wheelchair. I have receipts showing the cost was $8,000. I'm requesting compensation up to the liability limit." The supervisor's entire demeanor changed. She asked Patricia to wait, disappeared into an office for 10 minutes, and came back with a different form. 2 weeks later, Patricia received a check for $1,847. Same wheelchair, same damage, same airline. The only difference was that Patricia knew what she was legally entitled to and wasn't afraid to claim it. Here's the critical part that catches people. You must report wheelchair damage within 24 hours. This is not a suggestion. It's a hard deadline. If you wait longer than 24 hours to report the damage, airlines can argue that the damage occurred after they returned the wheelchair to you, and they have no way to verify when it actually happened. So the moment you see any damage, any cracks, any missing pieces, any bent frames, you report it immediately. Don't wait until you get to your hotel. Don't assume you can deal with it when you get home. Right there at baggage claim, before you leave the airport, you document and report. Take photos from multiple angles. Get a written damage report from the airline with a reference number. Do not accept verbal promises that they'll take care of it or handle it later. Everything must be in writing. And when they make their first compensation offer, if it's anywhere close to the full replacement or repair cost, you use this phrase. This amount doesn't reflect the Montreal Convention liability limit. My wheelchair costs X dollars to repair or replace. I have receipts and documentation. I'm requesting full compensation up to the legal limit. Have your receipts ready. If you bought the wheelchair years ago and don't have the original receipt, get a quote from a medical supply company for what it would cost to replace it today. That documentation is your leverage. Most of the time, when you demonstrate that you know the law and have documentation, the offer increases dramatically. If they still push back, that's when you escalate to the complaints resolution officer, which brings me to the next legal weapon in your arsenal. Alright, let's put all of this together into a complete legal script that you can actually use. I want you to save this section. Screenshot it, write it down in a notebook, put it in your phone's notes app, whatever works for you, because these exact phrases, used at the right moments, will completely transform how airlines treat you. When you're booking your flight, call the airline 48 hours in advance and say this: I'm requesting wheelchair assistance under the Air Carrier Access Act for my flight on whatever date. I need written confirmation of this request. Get the confirmation number. Get the name of the person you spoke to. Write down the date and time of the call. Then immediately send a follow-up email to the airline's customer service department with the same information. You're creating a documented paper trail that proves you made the request properly and in advance. So, here's what I want you to do right now, today. Before you close this video and forget half of what you just learned, screenshot or write down the legal script section, save those exact phrases somewhere you'll actually see them before your next flight. If you have a trip coming up, request your wheelchair assistance 48 hours in advance, using the language I gave you. Create that paper trail. Research which airlines have active class action settlements that you might be eligible for. If you flew United, American, or Delta between 2022 and 2025 and had wheelchair issues, check the settlement websites today. The deadlines are approaching and that money is yours if you claim it. Create a physical rights card. Get an index card and write down the power phrases. I'm requesting pre-boarding under a CAA. I need to speak with your crew immediately. This doesn't reflect the Montreal Convention limit. Keep it in your passport holder or wallet. When you're stressed and exhausted at an airport, you won't have to remember the exact wording. You'll have it in writing. Which of these legal rights surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments, because I want to know what information is landing and what people need to hear more about. If you know someone who travels with wheelchair assistance, someone who's had terrible experiences or is nervous about flying, share this video with them right now. You might be giving them information that completely transforms their next trip. Subscribe so you never miss updates on your legal rights and protections, because I'm tracking every settlement, every regulation change, every shift in enforcement, and I'll keep you informed so you're always one step ahead. Save this video, bookmark it, come back to it before every flight. Practice saying these phrases out loud so they feel natural and confident when you need them. Remember, they're betting you don't know the law. Now you do. They're counting on you staying silent when rights get violated. Prove them wrong. You're not asking for favors or special treatment. You're claiming what's legally, federally, rightfully yours, and that changes absolutely everything.